I've been meaning for some time to do a revisiting of the Alien films for some time, and kept putting it off and then forgetting about it and then remembering to do it. And originally the idea was I would have all of the films covered leading up to Alien Romulus. Well, that didn't happen. See, everything could have been like consecutive and chronological at that point. So already have the review up on Alien Romulus, and ultimately the best thing I can say about it in conclusion was that it was probably the best of the failed sequels to the first two Alien films. And I say that as the conclusion ultimately is there are really only two Alien films of any worth. The others have their moments and whatnot, but in my opinion, each one of them failed and fell far from the achievements of the first two. And sadly, it is the same case with Alien Romulus, even though it's probably one of the better looking ones and that sort of thing, but fell pretty short from the goal, I would think. So it all started with the original 1979 film of Alien, based on a story idea called Star Beast, which was inspired by the Dark Star movie and this idea of, truckers in space type thing. And off they went, and you had this interesting look to science fiction and outer space in it, where things are kind of run down, and it looks very familiar, yet it's in this distant future of deep space travel and whatnot. And it was an interesting take because you see it repeated. Certainly Outland has a lot of that, it looks like, and that's one of the things about Outland and even Blade Runner could all exist in the same universe because they look very similar. And it has that texture to it. But of course, the overall aspect was the mechanized surrounding of the Nostromo ship, of which the characters exist in, had a lot of shadow and darkness and strange noises, which was fitting for this film, which is entirely really a horror movie. It's science fiction, it's in outer space, but that doesn't mean horror cannot find a home there, and has, and quite a few B movies and whatnot. You can clarify them or classify them as horror, along with the science fiction elements and whatnot. And the same is true for Alien. It's a monster movie, and all kinds of themes of death and birth, and just fear of violation and disease, if you will, or parasites or what have you. All that plays out in it, and but it's performed. It immediately captures a certain credibility in that not quite a documentary style to it, a little bit further of stripping down than it could have been, but no, it doesn't really do that. But still, the crew and their interactions with one another is very believable, and it's believable in the sense that they've been stuck in that ship for a while, on this mission to secure this mineral ore that they collected and were now shipping back to Earth. And then they wake up from their sleep pods, because you got to sleep a long time to make the trip. They don't have warp speed. I would assume there's, and it's never mentioned, there are certain details you never get to in this. But one of them is the means by which they achieve space travel. I have to assume it's much faster than anything we would be capable of developing now. But to just say, well, it was, you go to sleep for a while and you wake up, but I don't think they were traveling for centuries. They weren't, because it details that, and certainly the sequel does as well. So that there's certain mechanics and whatnot that's would have to be there, but it's not what the movie's about. You just accept that this is their occupation and that's what they do. And so there's a hint of mystery and a sort of almost quiet, subtle, sinister nature to it all, of what was about to happen to them. And later on, you, of course, find out they were betrayed and so on. There's just all kinds of things that run the gamut of them. And it's quite tragic in the sense that no matter what they did, almost, they were doomed. Another horror trope here is, just about everybody dies, but typically quite a few. The girl lives, at least one of them anyway. And so that would be Ripley's place in this film. But it's very much an ensemble, and the way it's carried out, it's really at the end that she becomes the sole survivor and outwits the monster at the end to escape. But that is not clear from the rest of the film, as they're all picked off by it. Even though she was the one smart enough to know, maybe we shouldn't let the infected guy in. But of course, again, betrayal, as the traitor was amongst them, in the form of the android they didn't know was an android, and so on and so forth. But that's the play on it. It isn't just the monster, it's that they've been bamboozled by their employers. And as for the motive, it's briefly mentioned by Ripley herself. They probably want this creature for the weapons division. And that's the first mention of it. That later gets mentioned more and more, is never fully addressed or dealt with narratively. There was supposed to have been, I believe, an original idea for a third film that didn't come to fruition, where the supposed colonial war that's going on with humanity in space could have played a role into another story, but it just never happened. So that does get mentioned. But the main outset is this mysterious signal. They don't know what it is, and this could be true alien contact, which you have to at this point assume hasn't happened, at least as far as they know. Retcons have changed that. But they go, and then there's this original idea with H.R. Giger's artwork, was to give it truly not just monstrous look and the evoking of death and whatnot in the darkness of the designs, but also the design of the alien ship itself. It's very unusual, and I think he was inspired by, once again, the shape of bones for what it is. And also indicative within the story is that it is very old. It has been sitting there for a very long time. And the mysterious pilot of the ship, the corpse there, is mentioned to have been fossilized. And that was an interesting, tantalizing thing that I thought there were possibilities there. But, they kind of dropped the ball on that in later sequels as well. But again, if you just follow with, there's only 2 films, then it remains mysterious. And what is it? Yeah, it's just some poor bastard. This is what happened to him. And now it's humanity's turn. Very similar to John Carpenter's The Thing, where there's some alien species came into contact with the Thing, and it absorbed them, copied them, and now it's on the Earth, and so on and so forth. So that's the deal. They're bound by bylaws to go investigate this, and of course they're being quietly manipulated by the secret android. And of course, John Hurt, his character, gets impregnated by the creature that he stumbles into. And they don't understand how this works or what's going on. Meanwhile, the android is taking observations of it, but he's ordered to remove it from him, and so he tries, but of course the creature has acid for blood. So it burns through the ship, and they're worried it's going to burn all the way through the hull, and no, now what? But it stops at a certain point, so they're able to save their shuttle and fly back to the overall mothership apparatus that they would connect to. And and so it says, oh, wow, what a brilliant defense mechanism. You don't dare mess with it because, you know, it'll burn you when you do. And, of course, this repeats later when people combat these things. It's blood splatter is very dangerous. So, of course, the famous scene, you know, the chest bursting scene, of course, is very famous and horrific. Seeing it repeated later on, it doesn't have the same impact, of course. But this was the hideous birth of the monster. And rather unparalleled. There's been other attempts at trying to have a gross out moment and whatnot, but really pretty much broke the mold with that scene. And others is like, it's kind of like Alien, you know. You know, this is not gonna hold the same gravity. But there it was, and the shock of them and what they're dealing with. And well, it's just a little guy. Well, it made a cocoon and grew into a really nasty, ugly, deadly butterfly. And hunted them down one by one. If only the cat could talk, you know. The cat seemed to know what to do, could probably smell the thing, was able to avoid it. And Ripley's not the only survivor. The cat survives as well. And so there you are. But also, once again, the darkness of the ship becomes their enemy, and quite the ally of the creature, as you know, they're trying to kill it, but they just they walk into it. And so different facets of how the deaths of each one can happen. Of course, Dallas goes the wrong direction, gets caught, and that's it. There was a deleted scene where Ripley does encounter Dallas, that he was not dead yet, but he had been cocooned down below and probably impregnated with a chest buster. And you know, he begs Ripley to kill it. And she does, because he's in just absolute agony. And all she has is that, you know, blowtorch weapon they devised, and so that's what she has to use to do it. Plus, there was some dialogue there that seemed to indicate that there had been something of a romantic relationship between the two. I don't know if it would lead to marriage or anything like that, but you know, they're stuck in space, and I believe there was lines cut from it also that, you know, Ripley was getting suspicious about Ash, and asked Lambert if she had ever slept with him, and she said no. And she was like, yeah, me neither. So the idea was kind of indicative of the era of its time, that this sort of thing was sort of this recreation. You know, you're stuck in space for a long time, and you know, you hook up from time to time. But nobody hooked up with Ash, because Ash was an android. They just didn't know it. So by the time they find out, he tries to kill Ripley. There's the big fight there and the big reveal as they have to bash his head off. And then, you know, there's a certain personality element to the android, and you have to conclude in the way he's acting towards the end when he's preparing to kill Ripley. This is in violation, I'm sure, to original programming that the androids would have, but they did that for the purpose of the mission, and yet it was still... it seemed difficult for him to perform it, even though there's quite an arrogance developed within Ash, and especially at the end before they burn him up for good. And he's rather, you know, he tells them, I can't argue about your chances, but you have my sympathies. No. And that sort of thing. But there, I took it to mean the quirks and the weird response of that to actually kill a human being completely on his own, rather than through manipulation and lying to them and stuff like that. You know, it was pushing on the programming there. But he doesn't succeed because the others save Ripley and all that. And they decide, well, we're going to leave and blow up the ship. They couldn't before because they thought Ash was human, and the shuttle is only good for 4. And or he can't, or 4 was too many, or something like that. So now he's gone. Well, now we can do it. But unfortunately, Parker and Lambert, they get killed as well, because Lambert froze and panicked. And again, it's like one scene after another. What loses credibility? Well, really none of it, because she's seeing the monster and she's been terrified of it, and she's been on the verge of meltdowns within the film, and to suddenly be confronted by it, she freezes. And this is what dooms both her and Parker. Parker had the creature dead in its sights with his blowtorch gun, or flamethrower rather, and probably at least could have done serious damage to it, and maybe could have saved both of them. But she wouldn't get out of the way, and he wasn't going to torch her. So he tries to attack it, and it doesn't go well now. And so poor Ripley's got on her own. She gets out with Jones the cat. Tries to stop. It tries to stop the countdown for the ship to being destroyed, but it's too late. And once again, and of course, Mother the computer was against him. But that's one thing that with the programming. But I suppose they didn't anticipate command codes or whatnot, because destroying the ship would destroy their prize of the creature. And so you would think the company would deny them the ability to destroy it. They still could have gotten away in the shuttle and just left it out there, and then a recovery team could have come to get it. But they just overlooked that. But still, it's a minor thing overall, and ultimately, it's crappy programming anyway, because she tried to undo it and shut it off because she couldn't get to the shuttle just yet because the monster was around in the hangar. And it didn't work. So then she has to go back and, it looks like he's gone now. I can make good my getaway. Well, guess where he is? Yes, on the shuttle. So before Ripley does a little striptease, and that's nice, the creature attacks. But she has a plan, and she, shoots him into outer space. And that's that. And she and Jones get in their sleep pod and hope for the best. Of course, aliens would answer what happens next in that. Of course, Alien Romulus says something happened in between. Okay. And other people are worried, hey, this kind of messes up the timeline or what. It really doesn't, because everything is wiped out at the end. Well, not the main character, but still the creature and all that stuff. It's all gone. So they were still trying to get this creature for their own motives, and it didn't work. And so when they find Ripley in the next one, they try again. So there you go with Alien, which was a full-on horror movie in space, of being trapped in these claustrophobic conditions, and where your own home, as it were, for them at the time, becomes an enemy due to the ever-encroaching darkness, which in its own way mimics the alien ship itself. Not entirely, because the alien ship looked very, organic material, bone and ribs and stuff like that. And yet it kind of does within the mechanics of the Nostromo, and then ultimately how the alien is able to conceal itself without Ripley seeing it, because the alien itself matched the parts of the ship. So all good stuff, very intriguing, and a great monster movie in that aspect of it. So, how to follow it up? Well, different themes and really a different genre. Even though a lot of the elements continue there, and it is well connected to the first one, but this is rather an extraordinary achievement in and of itself, in how to do a sequel to a great film. And I would argue that Aliens is one of the few that did that. Even movies that have pretty good sequels and all that, but they're almost always very repetitive. And sure, there's repetition in this. You got to fight the aliens, but in the structure and a shift in genre, I contend takes place in the next one. But in the beginning, there was Alien, and just the aspect of the unknown and darkness, very fitting for the term of Alien.